What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Will of Rock MMA podcast.
What's going on, everybody? Main event for UFC on ESPN +7 in St. Petersburg, Russia. Alistair Overeem versus Alexis Oleinik. Phenomenal fight between both fighters. Obviously, Alistair Overeem got the best out of it, and with just striking TKO'd Alex Oleinik in the first round. I think it was like 4 minutes or something left.
And we expect that. Going into the fight, I said the perfect fight for Alistair Overeem is a guy that's wanting to just grapple, because before the grappling comes the striking. And one thing that Alistair Overeem does to every competitor that he's has the upper hand when it comes down to stand up is obviously throw his hands, throw his knees, which he's known for. So I was like, this is going to be one of the easiest fights for Alistair Overeem in his career if he doesn't get, if Oleinik didn't get a chance to grab him, right? So exactly how I originally planned, like I said last week, is exactly what happened this week. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's sad because obviously this is Oleinik's hometown, and he ended up taking the L there. But it is what it is. It's part of the fight game. Anyways, does this put Alistair Overeem in contention with the heavyweight fighters back again?
I believe so. There's no real heavyweight division. It's not as stacked as it once was back in the days. So I believe that he's still he falls under number 6 or 7 ranked, top ranks in the heavyweight division. Give him the top 5. You know what I mean? He deserves it. The guy's been around forever.
I think at this point you figure Curtis Blaze just came out of a big victory versus Willis. You got Alistair Overeem, I think, which would be just a great fight as it is.
Who's that?
Curtis Blaze versus Alistair Overeem. I think that's the fight to make.
Didn't they fight already?
If I'm not mistaken, I did believe it's totally worth making it again. I mean, they both just come out. They both took losses, came back from wins, and now I think it's a perfect match for both of them. And then real fast, something I hate touching on negative things with MMA fighters, but we did get this news from Darren Till. There was, I don't know exactly where he was. Sweden.
So he was in Spain.
Spain.
If I'm not mistaken, an island in Spain. They had called ruckus in one hotel room. They left that hotel room and they were then
they stole the taxi.
Not yet. So then they were on their way to the other hotel. The other hotel didn't want to accept them. So when the taxi got there and went to the back to get their luggage, they decided to hop in the cab, and they pretty much stole the cab, flew out of it with it, and the cops eventually caught up to them. So we don't know what's the latest what's the latest thing that has happened to Terence Hill, but we expect them to do I would like to think he's doing some time. I mean, he stole a cab, you know what I mean,
in a foreign country, yeah. And I think it shows the level of maturity. It shows that the people he might be around ain't necessarily designed for him. He is obviously, his training is not taken very seriously. There's a lot that goes into this, and you start seeing the bigger light when it comes to Darren Till. I'm really, really hoping he comes out of this. There's so many fights to make for him. There's endless possibilities for someone like Darren Till, who's so young. So just sad to freaking see a young guy who's so much promising in the UFC to go through something like that. I want to touch on this, man. UFC on ESPN +8. Jacare versus Hermansson, sorry. The card, by the way, is totally stacked. I totally underestimated this card, by the way. After I really started to break it down, I was like, holy shit, there's a lot of great fights here. First fight, they got Thomas Gifford fighting Roosevelt Roberts. Any feedback on that?
Let me just, I'm not really familiar with either fighter. I'm going to go for Roberts in this fight.
So Roberts is 7-0. He is fighting at lightweight at 155. There's a lightweight match actually versus Thomas Gifford, and Gifford is 17-7. Picking Roberts being 7-0 might be the best chance, but he is fighting a veteran in the sport. Okay. This is also Thomas's first fight in the UFC. Next fight we got John Lineker versus Corey Sandhagen.
So a really good fight. I think Sandhagen. It's not ready for a guy like Lineker. Lineker is a beast. He's the top 2 or 3 in his division, and I do believe that Lineker will get that TKO that he's going in there for.
I couldn't agree with you more. John Lineker has really been able to put it all together. So the thing about John Lineker now is that not only is he great on his feet and he throws bombs, and if you get caught, we've seen what he's able to do. but his grappling and his ground and pound has also come up to another level. This is a really difficult fight for Corey, no matter how you see it. I do have John Lineker really coming out of this in the first round. Yeah. If he plays his cards right, John Lineker will defeat him. And Jesus, just looking at his freaking record, he's 31-8. He's been around for a long time, man. Next fight, you got Ian Cutelaba versus Glover Teixeira. I forgot about this freaking fight.
Okay, just to mention something, it's hard to tell what Glover Teixeira is coming into the octagon. It's like, when he first was starting in the UFC, which he had some visa problems before in Chuck Liddell. He was training with Chuck Liddell's camp, so Chuck Liddell was saying, yo, he needs to get into the UFC. He's going to be a champion. And he kind of proved it the minute he came into the octagon. You know, he had a really good wins against people like Rampage Jackson. He knocked out like 2 other opponents before finally fighting a guy like John Jones, which John Jones, every time he fights you, he changed your career. And that's exactly what he did to Glover Teixeira.
Let's not forget that Anthony of Rumble Johnson really knocked the Bojangles out of freaking Glover Teixeira as well.
Well, the reason why I'm even bringing that whole with John Jones, because that fight happened first, and then we saw the disaster that happened with Rumble Johnson.
We were there. No, we were there. It was a Jersey fight.
I believe so. But with that being said, if we get the Glover Teixeira that came in with the same hunger that he had when he first started, I expect an early TKO from Glover Teixeira because he's great with his hands. If not, you could probably see him lose in decision because he does tend to gas out throughout through the third round. So just throwing that out there.
I couldn't agree with you more. Let's not forget Glover Teixeira is a black belt Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well. The problem with Glover Teixeira, I think the age is catching up to him. The amount of fights that he's has really caught up to him. He doesn't look like himself. He looks a little sluggish. He looks a little slower. What Glover Teixeira is going to come out, like you said, is going to be the definition of who's going to win this fight. Glover Teixeira at 100% is hard to beat, man. Yeah. You want to stand and bang with him. He's a phenomenal boxer. You want to grapple with him. He's a black belt Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So a challenging and a great challenge for Ian, because Ian is in a perfect position to walk in, swipe away Glover Teixeira, and then start asking for some big names. So this is just a fight made for UFC fans. Yeah. Next fight, which I'm really curious to know who you have winning this fight, and I'm also have a lot to say about this. Alex Oliveira versus Mike Perry.
Oh, that is the Brazilian cowboy. I have a hard time picking against Mike Perry. I'm a fan of Mike Perry. He likes to stand and bang. We started to see him move a little better. However, I believe that Alex is a little quicker than he is, and before Perry throws one, I believe that Alex is going to catch him with a couple. I don't see a knockout necessarily from either fighter. I believe this goes to decision, and I'm going to have to go ahead and give it to Alex, man.
It's an interesting fight for many reasons. You got someone like Mike Perry who has almost tunnel vision. When it comes to fighting, he's very one-dimensional, and he's been proven to be a one-dimensional fighter. And that's the biggest issue with Mike Perry. I feel like there's not enough grappling in his game, and if he's standing and banging, most of the time the way he moves, he takes a hit to give a hit. And that longevity in the sport is only going to be for so long. And then you look at someone like Alex Oliveira, who has it all together. Has great ground game, also great stand-up game. The thing that is going to be the biggest factor in this fight, I think, is going to be his kicking. I think Oliveira is longer than Mike Perry, and I think his legs are going to determine this fight. If he's learned to keep his distance from Mike Perry and even shoot to try to go for a takedown, and just gas out Mike Perry, which we know in the past Mike Perry hasn't been himself. His gas tank flies out really fast. What conditioning does he have going into this fight is going to be the determining factor for Mike Perry. My personal opinion, because it's hard as hell. He's hard as nails to knock out. I got Alex Oliveira in decision.
It's a good choice.
Next fight, which I'm not crazy about, that this is the co-main event, is Greg Hardy versus Dmitry Smoliakov.
Yeah, this is a fight that should have started this pay-per-view, if it even would have made the pay-per-view. I mean, obviously the only reason is because of Ed Hardy. I have a hard time believing Ed Hardy's going to lose this fight. However, we have to take in consideration that he does not take a punch very well and tends to completely go off his game plan. I don't know the other fighter he's fighting. Can you give me his record?
He's 9-2.
He's 9 wins, 2 losses. I believe that probably screams even louder than Ed Hardy's record. I'm going to go ahead and pick against Hardy. Hardy is going to get either knocked out the first or second round in this fight.
Listen, I hope Greg Hardy finds his way and like really has trained to his full potential to really go into an MMA fight. This is his 4th fight in the UFC. First 4 or 5 in the MMA.
4 fights in the UFC? No,
I think he started with UFC. No, didn't UFC just got him off football?
I'm not sure. I know that he's fought twice in big events, but the other 2, I believe, it was when he was the Ultimate Fighter, not the Ultimate Fighter,
the contender fight.
Yeah.
It could be. At the end of the day, man, this guy is 3-1. Not full. When he's standing up and he moves pretty well. I mean, granted, he's a fully athletic. He was an ex-football player. But when he's in shambles, he just looks so bad. And this is just a bad look for the UFC, making him a co-main event to this fight.
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense to me. I think he's going to get completely dominated by Dimitri. That's my personal opinion. I would love to see Greg Hardy knock this guy out to really get a boost on his stock because he is easily promotable, as you guys can see. But I got Dimitri completely dominating this fight. I think they have enough tape on this guy now where you can fully train and know where his weaknesses are.
Yeah, I guess we're gonna have to wait and see on that one.
Absolutely, man. Next fight, which is the main event. By the way, this fight is in Florida. I didn't mention that before. Ronaldo Sosa versus Jack Hermansson.
So this is a really interesting fight. Jack Hermansson just finished winning. What was his last fight that he won?
It's Hermansson. It's Jack Hermansson.
He just fought and he just beat somebody. I can't think of who was it that he did.
I'll tell you right now. Go ahead.
Well, as you look at that, coming off a victory, and then we have a guy like Jacare who is starting to look a little bit of his age. You know, he's coming in the 40s. He's moving much slower. Do not get it twisted. He could knock you out with a right hand. And do not get it twisted. He could take you down and submit you.
He defeated David Branch.
That's what it was. I mean, this fight barely happened like 2 months ago where he beat David Branch.
That was March 30th, that fight. That's insane.
Right. So he comes back into the octagon. He's got the momentum going. Didn't really get hurt with Branch. I believe I'm going to give this to Hermansson. And you know, I love Jacare, and I believe we spoke about it briefly about how we believe that he was going to be the next UFC middleweight champion. I don't see it in his path at this point, the way this last performances has been. So for that reason, I'm going to give it to Hermansson, and he's going to win by decision.
So you put when what's his name? Jacare literally announced that he's even thinking about retiring. There was talks of retirement. We had this conversation prior to this podcast and older podcasts. He went into that mentality. Ever since that mentality came, Jacare has not been the same. I will say this: Jacare at 100% is a champion to me.
100%.
He is one of the few fighters who knows how to put it together. And the great thing about him is his stand-up game is improving every time he fights. But you see he's a step slower at this point, and for whatever reason, he doesn't shoot the way he used to shoot. And that's what he was known for. I mean, he was known as the alligator. He would grab you down and take you down, and you wouldn't be able to get up, ground and pound, and submit you. It's not a good look for Jacare going into this fight, coming off full momentum, someone like Jack. What I will say, I'm going Jacare. I believe in Jacare. Jacare at 100% is unbeatable. Hands down, he's unbeatable. I think we could both agree to that. Yeah. I got Jacare winning in decision.
All right, I guess we're going to have to wait and see this Saturday, which is 2 days from now. But anyways, we'll catch you guys next week.
Peace.